My name is Larry Corcoran. I was born in Beverly, Massachusetts in 1942.
And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Beverly for a few years, and we moved to Newburyport, Mass.
And when did you move to West Newbury?
We moved to West Newbury after me and my wife got married in '78.
What schools did you attend?
I went to Newburyport High School, and that's it until I got out of the service anyways.
Did you play any sports while you were in school?
Play football, basketball, that's about it.
What did your parents do for work?
My father was he was a plant manager in Raytheon, Quincy, Mass, and my mother was a home wife. I graduated from Newburyport in '63, and I didn't want to get drafted to Vietnam. Well, it just started, and I decided to go into the United States Navy.
What was basic training like?
Basic training was hell because they try to indoctrinate you the way, all created equal in the military, the Navy. That's the way they want to do it, and it was good. It was about 12 weeks, and it's about the first 2 weeks you had to get used to it, and after that, you only have to do it once. So it's really good, straightened you right out.
How did you arrive at basic?
It was a plane load of, believe it or not, all Navy guy recruits out of Boston to Chicago O'Hare Airport.
Did you have any specialized training?
Well, I could have gone. I wanted to go to machinist mate school, but that was filled. And they asked me if I wanted to go to interior communications, and I said no. I says when I get on the ship, I'll see what I can go to machinist mates. So, which I did.
What were your instructors like?
In boot camp?
In boot camp and in specialized training.
Well, the instructor we had, I think he should have been in the Marine Corps. He was right by the book, and he was really tough. And in the Navy, the ship, all my instructors were really good because I was in the engine room, and they were really good guys. Really good guys. It's like turbines, air conditioning, you name it, all sorts of pumps.
What equipment were you trained on?
Steam turbines, generators, AC, refrigeration, and that's it. It's quite involved. We ran the whole ship basically.
Where was your first duty station?
Norfolk, Virginia, on the USS. On the USS Northampton. It was a command communication ship. It was named after Northampton, Massachusetts, and that was it. Right out of Norfolk, we didn't go anywhere. We're a command communication ship. Our duty was, if it was a war, we had what they call the JACE team. And the JACE team worked for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So if it was a war, we would have taken the President and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and hid. And we had this great big satellite dish antenna back there. It's called the Tropode antenna, and that would go to Lewes, Delaware, and then to the Pentagon. And they could send a message around the world in half a second. But all the time we're out at sea, that would automatically lock to Lewes, Delaware. And then anything we had, they had to send us, it would go to the Pentagon in Washington.
What did you do for off-duty recreation?
Usually USO movies and stuff like that. Sometimes I had a motorcycle. We take bike trips up to Richmond, Virginia, and around Chesapeake Bay, down on Virginia Beach, places like that.
How long were you enlisted for?
I was enlisted for 4 years, active, and after I got out, I had to do 2 years inactive, and that was it.
What were the 2 years of inactive like?
Excuse me?
What were the 2 years of inactive like?
Not really. I didn't really have to go, but if you went, if you got called back up, you'd go in back as a rate lower than you were. So I was an E4, petty officer third class. So if they called me back in, I'd go back as instead of an E4, I'd go back to an E3. So that's why I didn't do it. I mean, a lot of guys did it. They just forget the reserves. They'll take a chance of getting called up, which never happened. So that was good.
Did you? What states or other countries did you travel to?
Well, we went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. That was like for a shakedown cruise after the ship got out of the yards. And then went to San Juan, Puerto Rico, Montego Bay, Jamaica. And that's about it. Other than that, usually we hit cities on the East Coast like Fort Lauderdale, Charleston, South Carolina, New York, Boston, and maybe Portland, Maine.
Do you have any family members serving in the military?
Yeah, my brother, he was a year younger than I am, and he was he enlisted in the Navy. He was on the USS Salisbury Sound off of Vietnam, and they decommissioned that, so at the time, the youngest could get stationed with the oldest as long as the oldest signed off. So I got the papers, I signed off, and he came aboard the Northampton for the last 2 years. So we're stationed together.
Is the ship you were serving on still in service?
No, the 1970 they scrapped it because the satellites came out, and they figured if the Russians could track the ship, they would know where the president was, so they scrapped it.
When did you move to West Newbury?
We moved to West Newbury in 1978 and bought a house on Prospect Street, and been there ever since.
What was the town like when you first came?
Oh my God. Town was, well, it's really small. I don't know, maybe 4,000 people, if that. And I decided I would join the police department as a reserve. And at the time, there was only one permanent guy, and that was the police chief. And then from there on, it grew up, till I had another guy and another guy. So eventually we had, seven or eight people on. Then we went 24/7 around the clock. Before we were only, if we got a call, they'd call your house up, like they used to dispatch from Groveland or Merrimack. We answer the call, we get dressed, go pick up the other guy, we go to the call. So people were surprised. They said, what do you mean you don't have 24 hours coverage? Well, you do, but not around the clock. We're home sleeping, But that changed, so, it was good.
What, were you ever involved in town government at all?
Just the PD.
Just the police?
And I was on the housing committee, and then I was on the water board. I just resigned from that last year. I had about 9 or 10 years on that.
Would you recommend anyone else, recommend someone enlist in the Navy or any other branch?
I would definitely, it's the Navy, I'm a Navy guy, but I would, if I went in, I'd tell somebody who wanted to go in, I'd tell them the Air Force, Coast Guard, or Navy, and the Army. It's not bad,
Were you awarded any medals or commendations that you're proud of?
Yeah, I got, the real one is Good Conduct Medal. Those are hard to get in the Navy, and American Defense Medal. And even though that was it, I mean, we were in the Vietnam era. I'm a Vietnam area vet, but we never saw duty over there, but.
Do you still keep in contact with any of the people you served with?
I try to. I went to one reunion out to Buffalo, New York. They had the USS Sullivan's out there, and the Sullivans in a submarine, and there was I think the USS Little Rock, I believe, I forget, but yeah, it was a good time. I see a lot of guys that were on the ship. Really interested.
What Did you take advantage of the GI Bill at all?
Oh yeah, I took it, went to school, I went to Northern Essex Community College on that, and that was it. And well, after that, I went to Springfield College. They had a satellite campus up to Manchester, New Hampshire at the time. So I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, so for the PD. So.
Did you serve as a reserve officer for any other towns, or just West Newbury?
Newbury and Groveland, and then I eventually went full-time on West Newbury. I worked at GE. I was a iron worker at GE, and then they asked me, on the PD, they asked me if I wanted, and it was about 3 times they asked me. I told my wife, you know, I'm going to do it. And she was kind of upset, but I did it, and I joined the PD, and I bought back my military time and my reserve time, so that helped me. And once you get a bachelor, or you get a associate's degree, you get a 10% pay raise. If you get a bachelor's, it's 15. If you get your master's, it's 20%. So that was really good. And the best thing about it, I didn't have to commute to Lynn. I could walk from my house to work, which was good. My son was little at the time, and that was a big thing because I could spend more time with him. So it worked out great.
Where did you meet your wife?
I met my wife at the Grog in Newburyport, a restaurant down there. And that's where we met. And we got married in Ipswich at St. Stanislaus, and our reception was at the VFW in Ipswich.
Is there anything you would say to someone who's going to be joining the Navy or the Armed Forces?
Did I what now?
Is there any advice you'd give to anyone who's going to be joining the Navy or the Armed Forces?
Yeah, I think it's good, especially if you don't have going to college, you can pick up, all sorts of schooling in the Navy, and I'd recommend any branch of the service, basically, And the Navy straightens out a lot of people, they know once you go through the gates, they usually pick up like a person you're going to have a hard time with. So discipline, and that's it,
And what are your hopes for the future?
Well, I'm retired now, so I like to get involved. When I retired from the PD, I was substitute teaching at Pentucket. I didn't really like that, so I ended up going to the courthouse up in Brentwood, New Hampshire as a bailiff, and I worked there. I had a medical problem last year, and I had an operation, so I took time off, and I'll probably go back there, like 3 or 4 days a week. You make your own time if you want to. That's pretty interesting.
Are there any other stories from your time in the Navy that you'd like to tell?
We picked up President Johnson. We picked him up at Portland, Maine, and took him up to Campobello Island to meet the Canadian Prime Minister. And I think we were on one of the covers, either Life magazine or Look magazine back then, but that was really interesting. And, we had on the ship, they had a presidential stateroom, and like a glass door, and you look at the glass door, and they had a desk like at the White House with a red, black, and a white phone. So we used to go in there, we had to check the air conditioning and everything in there. And they had a big circular conference table. And starting with George Washington, they had every president all the way up to Lyndon Johnson. And they had these nice White House cups of, coffee cups and stuff. I said, boy, I'd like to have one of those. But if you got one of those, you probably got a court-martial. But it was pretty interesting, the ship, because like I said, they had that tropode antenna, and that was all communications. Some of the communication spaces we had to go into when there was a Marine Guard. You had to be an E4 at least to get in there, and you couldn't look left and right, but you could. It was all crypto, but we couldn't understand it anyways. But all sorts of secure communication spaces. So it was pretty interesting, But we're good. I can tell you a story. We were going down to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We got off at Cape Hatteras, and our ship was 700 feet long. and we took a 43-degree roll. It like went over like this, and when it came back, it went like that. And we had guys that had broken arms, ankles, and I'll tell you, almost halfway over, and then it came back. It was 700 feet long. Mother Nature is just unbelievable. Yeah, really. I mean, crazy when you see it, you know. But like I said, we had a major overhaul in Portsmouth, Virginia. They put the ship in dry dock, so we went underneath it. You see the props. The props are probably 60 feet high. We had four props, screws, and they took all the shafts out and everything. Then when you got out, you go to a shakedown cruise to Guantanamo Bay. That's where you go. So I got there, and I don't perspire much, so I went onto the pier. That was like a bucket of water, and then I was in the engine room. That's hotter down there. They make you take salt pills, which is crazy because that's the worst thing you could take. So I was off my shift. I went up. I started getting dizzy, so I went to sick bay, and they knew right away I had heat exhaustion. So I was there for about a week. All these other guys had to do the drill, so I was in there for a week and a half with all air conditioned and everything. So it's really kind of made out for me in a way, but you know. But then on the way back, we did a full power run, and like I said, we're 700 feet long. We had 4 turbines rated at 30,000 horsepower apiece, 4 shafts, and we did 39.5 knots. So that was really moving, almost 42, 41 miles an hour, something like that.
700 feet, wow.
Yeah, yeah. You can see the wake all the way back to the horizon. It was unbelievable. We had a nuclear sub with us all the time. Once in a while you see that, but, you know.
So you did?
Yeah, oh yeah. Because if we took the president and the joint of staff, they were always with us.
Mm.
Pretty remarkable. And then we saw the Enterprise out there, that aircraft carrier, that was nuclear power, and you see it like on a turn. They wouldn't tell you how fast, but they say they could do 50 plus on the water. And then they said that nuclear subs could go faster than that under the water, which is really amazing. But you know, that's some of the stuff they'll never tell you, but you know. And some of the weapons we got, I mean, who knows, you know, crazy.
Did you ever have to go, I know you said you went to Canada, but did you ever go over to Europe?
Never. Just stayed on the East Coast because that was part of our duty. If there was a war, or we were taking. He had 1 of 3 places to go, and the ship was one of them, and the mountains was another one. I forget where the other one's, the Air Force, the plane, but pretty interesting, really, you know. But it was great duty. The food was awesome. Like when I got on there, I weighed about 160. When my brother came over, he didn't recognize me because I weighed about 210 then. But food, won the Atlantic Fleet Award for chow all the time. I mean, we'd anchor out up to Lewes, Delaware, and they'd cook out, you know, steaks. I mean, it was crazy, really good. You know, you can knock that. Really good. So.
I shot a movie aboard the USS Salem.
Oh, yeah.
Lindsay.
Yeah, I've been on the Salem. I went, when they were taking that from down to Quincy, they wanted to know if I'd take a ride on it. I never did, but I've been on it. But the last time I was on it, that was a long time ago, they needed a lot of work done on it. You know. But that's what the size of my ship was the same as that.
Really?
Yeah. What did you do on there? Did you get to go in the engine room or anything like that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where.
Very hot.
Yeah, that's where I was. You imagine how hot it was down there. The only thing that saved us is you're under a blower, and then it's really hot. And you know, like the steam lines were like 600-pound steam lines, 850-degree superheaters. So you got to extend under a steam line that cut a pinhole would cut you right in half. If one of them let go, you'd all be cooked. That's the end of you know. And you're 5 decks below the water line.
Were you a fireman as well?
As a what?
Fireman?
Well, the Raiders, you start off as a fireman, then you became, you go up E1, E2, E3, then E4. Once you get to E4, you're a petty officer, so you get out of a lot of stuff, and you stand a lot of different watches and stuff, you know what I mean?
Oh no, you're a sweatshirt. You have the.
Oh, no, I was a fireman. No, this is Brett Birkinshaw. He was West Newbury Fire Department, then he was on the PD as a reserve, and then he went full-time on Newburyport Fire Department. He passed away about, I don't know, it must be 2 years now or 3 years ago with cancer. So the sweatshirt is they have fundraisers. They had a fundraiser for the family. They got enough money to pay the house off, and every year they have a thing for him. Honestly, he was a great kid, great kid. He'd do anything for you. He was an electrician by trade. And if you had like lights to hook up in your car or anything like that, he'd do it for you without even batting an eye. He was really a great guy. Tough loss, you know. So.
Is there anything else you'd like to
Well,
tell?
let me see. No, by town. Well, when I was an iron worker at GE, I had 19 years there. Then I went full time on the PD. And then I became the DARE officer. I was the first DARE officer in town. Did the Page School, the high school. And it's too bad they don't have the program still. Some departments still have it, but it was a great program. And I had one girl, I was going to the food mart in town, and a girl stopped me. She says, "You Officer Larry?" I goes, "Yeah." She says, "I want to thank you for the DARE program because I went to school. That helped me out so much." I said, "Well, I'm glad I could help somebody anyways, you know. But it should have it because of today with all the drugs and stuff. Kids, you know, they get involved. They don't know what they're taking, or you know. So I think that's the best job I had. I mean, it was good. I liked the kids. The kids were really interested in the questions they asked. Sometimes they had a chuckle in a way because there were some of the questions were pretty interesting. You know.
Like what?
Well, you know, my father gets up and he takes this pill in the morning. Well, that's a vitamin pill he takes or whatever, you know, something like that, you know. all sorts of questions that, you know, wow, we're going to deal with this. And, you know, some of the questions you're going to answer, but some of them you kind of, you know, give up, you know. That's all I can tell you, you know. But they were good. They were good. That was a lot of fun.